Namaste, everybody. So this morning, I had gone for a walk, and during this season, if you're going outside, you'll see all these Canadian geese flying. And what they're doing is they're flying to the south of America to get away from the winter months. But when they fly, you'll see they fly in a certain formation. And it's very interesting when you find the reason behind why they fly in a certain formation. And it connects to what Mohan Bhagwat-ji was saying in his inaugural speech. They conserve energy, they provide lift to each other, and they reduce the air resistance when they fly together in that formation. So that's one of the messages we could take back. But now we have this distinguished panel over here. So without any further ado, we'll start with their summaries. So we'll go through each conference. Each coordinator of this conference will present a very short summary of what transpired, what were some of the key highlights, what were some of the outcomes, and that will take us till maybe 10 o'clock, hopefully. I think we've lost a few minutes. But then after that, we'll have a discussion. And in the beginning, we'll have a discussion between the coordinators, and then after that, we'll open it up to the audience. So that's the agenda for this session. So with that, I'll invite Sanjay Puriji to the stage.
Distinguished panelists with me who have put in weeks, months, maybe years of work in putting this conference together, and all of you who have come from many, many different parts of the world, giving family time and others aside, and volunteers, because everything at least that we have done has been on the basis of volunteers. I stand here because of the great work of our volunteers. So please give a big round of applause to all of them. I also want to recognize my co-chair, Ambassador Kapoor, who is sitting right in front of me, who is not with me, but he played an equal and as important, maybe more important role in, at least in the Hindu Political Conference, and Jagdish Shevani-ji, and many others who worked on this. Political empowerment, I believe, is very, very important. Whatever your perspective is, whether you like politics, you don't like politics, you hate it, etc. And I think we had an amazing group of panelists, and what was discussed to me, having been in this area for about close to 20 years, was fairly enlightening. I learned a lot myself, and what was discussed, that there are some parts of the world where Hindus are obviously either whether you call them political persecution or political marginalization, and there are places like Caribbean, Fiji, and especially African countries. And I'll come to Africa in a second. But that was one of the things that was a theme that was discussed. And then, how do we expand political leadership in Western democracies? You see a lot of Indian Americans running for office in the US, but what about Europe? We saw some very bright young people in Europe, but I think there is an opportunity to expand. And how do we go about it, we'll discuss in the next slide. But collective strategies to address adverse and complex political environments. What happens when a member of the Hindu community is under political attack in one part of the world? Well, if you're under attack in one part of the world politically, you should have your back through your friends politically in the rest of the world, and it is really the responsibility for everybody else to stand up. And we are talking about 100 plus MPs in 20 countries of Hindu origin. That's power. But that power needs to be utilized, as Abhayji has said, as Bhagwat-ji has said, and others have said, and how do we go about it? We'll talk about tangible results. But the most important thing was, how do we empower, if you can just go back to the last slide, please, empower the next generation of political leaders by training, mentoring, and developing support systems. It's really my kids, your kids, and the kids coming after that. They're going to be the flag bearers of our generation. And how do we mentor them? How do we empower them? And how do we engage them? I think that was, if there's something that I take back, and I hope some of you take back, is something relating to the next generation. So how do we go about doing that? If you can just move to the next slide. So the highlights were what? Harsh reality of conditions faced by Hindus in hostile and complex political environments. If any of you attended our political session on harsh environments, you saw a gentleman from Pakistan who's a political activist sobbing in tears. You saw a political leader from Sri Lanka talk about the slow and systematic wiping out of Hindus in Sri Lanka, politically and in many economically. And we could go on and on and on. So that was a harsh reality that we have to face. Only then can we actively engage in figuring out how do we solve the problem. And then Africa is an absolute missed opportunity. We had an amazing political leader. She's an MP from South Africa and some other places. But how many generations of us have been in South Africa? Mahatma Gandhi was in South Africa. And guess how many MPs of Indian origin are there in South Africa? Two. And we have generational work there. So either we are not engaging in political discourse, or we are not getting the success from our Hindu community. In either case, that is not acceptable. Not acceptable because today, the environment is still reasonably conducive, but we all remember Uganda and many other places. If you're not politically active, you are going to be really susceptible to any kind of political action. And then there was, the constant theme was that Indians or Hindus do not vote. They all talk, they do WhatsApp, they all give great speeches and yes, nod and everything else, but they do not vote. And unless you vote, or unless you engage, and if your apathy is not going to change, neither this generation or next generation is going to actually go. So, but what's the good news? There are some fantastic young MPs, young leaders coming in. We saw young leaders from UK, Norway, and many other places coming in. And how do we engage them? Last slide. I'm being given my time marker, so I'm going to go a little fast. So what are the outcomes, and what do we take from the lessons, the reality of what we need to do? We need to establish a transcontinental task force that can react in adverse situation. So if there is an adverse situation, you need a group of people, whether it is an MPs, the group of MPs that is there who can react to a situation and say, this is not acceptable. Whether it's the incident in Fiji or South Africa, every Hindu MP around the world should stand up for their brothers and sisters. So we are going to establish a task force to do that. This work cannot just be done by great volunteers that we have had. We need a permanent secretariat either in the US or UK or some other country outside Bharat that can be there to support these people. And we are going to get that going for them. We are also going to get a group of mentors, eminent people, or experienced people who can help formulate a vision going forward. Because I don't want to stand here 4 years from now and say the same thing to you. I want to tell you tangibly what has been achieved in this and in the prior engagement that we have. So we'll have a vision statement, hopefully in the next 3 months set out. And then set concrete timelines as we do in business. You set a vision and you set concrete timelines to achieve that. And we're going to do that. But most importantly, and a lot of that work has been done by Mahesh Bindraji from New Zealand, we're going to create a digital database of all politically elected or running MPs or politically active Hindus around the world so that they can engage and they can empower each other. So with that, I thank every one of you who has attended our sessions, and if you didn't, please talk to us and we'll let you know what has happened. But thank you, Abhijit, and thanks to all my panelists.
Dignitaries and delegates. Media is all pervasive. We use it, we suffer from it, we have to deal with it. This conference was the second global conference, Hindu Media Conference. It was divided into 6 sessions over 2 days, 24 speakers, over 100 questions, and boundless energy. We couldn't contain any of it in just one session. We thought next time we might need to change the format, perhaps increase time. Next slide, please. The first session was on news. Fake news is a coinage that I don't know who invented, but it certainly got popular here in America. And it reached India pretty fast. I think this is one problem that we need to deal with by digging out facts and challenging the news. But more than fake news, our session discovered, especially the session chair, that it's the fake narratives which we need to deal with because they are seemingly based on facts. Facts which are shorn out of their context and then stories spun around them. That is a more complex challenge and needs even harder work because then you need to create a context and you need to create another narrative in order to challenge that narrative. So dealing with news is getting more and more challenging, and it needs far more groomed and seasoned journalists, people who are nicely rooted in facts, in analysis, do their homework, bring the rigor, and challenge the established narratives, because it is the narrative which has longer life. News perishes in a short while, but a narrative gets sustained over a period of time, and it creates impressions. It actually leads to winning or losing the battle of perceptions. The second session was about, may I have the second slide, please? Technology. Technology is changing the way we consume media. Technology is now not about one size fits all. It is enabling customization. We are delivering content as you want it, where you want it, in the manner you want it, from the medium you want it. And these challenges are also creating multiple sources that you need to be familiar with, you need to deal with, you need to actually be on top of. What it is leading to is a lot of fragmentation. You have smaller audience clusters striven all over time zones from different genres, different media options. How to address them, how to create one unified picture or impression is the challenge in the future. And since technology is doing it, answer is also in technology itself. We will be able to aggregate audiences. Our experts assured us. But the need, the requirement, the prerequisite is that we stay familiar with the technological changes that are happening, keep abreast of it, train ourselves, upgrade our skills, and make sure, as a society, we invest in such professionals, both in technology and media, to be on the right side of this change. Next slide, please. Another key aspect was the business of media. Very often it is the business that decides what kind of behavior, what kind of content, what kind of imagery would be disseminated from the media. So for that, we need media entrepreneurs. Now the question was, most of the media entrepreneurs back home in India have Hindu-sounding names. Then where is the problem? I deliberately use the expression Hindu-sounding names because there's a difference. And they are the first ones to get up and say, but I am also a Hindu. How can you take that away from me? And that's where we are stumped. The point is we need to have the right orientation, which calls for, thank you, which calls for the right kind of media entrepreneurs and probably activist entrepreneurs and not just businessmen entrepreneurs who are profit-driven or clout-driven. Next slide, please. But the media that is consumed the most is entertainment media. All of news media put together, especially from television, aggregates no more than maybe 10 or 12% audience. This is where we get subliminal images without us realizing they change our perceptions on the sly. The answer to that is not just opposing a film, opposing a book, but write your book, make your film, write the right songs, and create an alternative entertainment, invest in it, compete in the marketplace for eyeballs, for audiences. That was the short uptake in entertainment, and we have new and upcoming directors, filmmakers, story writers, some of whom were present and really stole the show. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I'm running out of time. Authors, that was the last session. What do authors say? We have a challenge of keeping our youth connected to our culture, connected to our ethos. And the issue here was, how do we get them interested? The solution was, tweak the story a little, make it cool, make it more relevant to the current day age. One very interesting example given by Amish was, Valmiki's Ramayana was tweaked some 400 years ago by Tulsidas with a few additions and alterations, and it became more relevant and very popular in the times it existed. So how do we tweak our epics? How do we tweak our stories without taking the soul away? Maybe a bit of cover, maybe a bit of embellishments, maybe a bit of look and feel, in order to make it relevant, make it contemporary, and make it cool. And with that, then, fight hard. Fight hard with what competes with you. Next. Media matters. Pay attention. Thank you.
So good morning, everyone. As mentioned, Mukesh apologized for not being here this morning. Today, I will just provide a few highlights from the economic portion of the program. So the first program, so the purpose of the economic forum was to discuss the India economic opportunity and U.S.-India relations as it pertains to trade. So in the first panel, we discuss trade friction between India and the United States. The second section was discussing with successful Indian American C-suite executives how they became successful in the business community. So we discuss mentorship and how to create expertise and become an expert in your field. The third panel discussed on India's economic reform agenda, and particularly the Make in India program. The fourth panel, we discuss how India can become how India can become a top 5 economy by 2030. And the sixth panel discuss how we as individuals can support India's economic growth. So the outcomes for these panels were, the first panel we discussed that trade between India and the United States is very important, and as our economies become more intertwined, there will be more economic disputes, but we can resolve it with proper leadership. Secondly, in the second panel, the C-suite executives discuss how leadership comes from hard work, strong values and intention, learning from adversity, being respectful, and being tolerant. That's how those were their recommendations on how to become successful in the business community. On the third panel, we discussed the Make in India program and how India is on the right track of reforming its economy, and how the government of India needs to continue that proper trajectory. Fourth panel, we discuss how India is a fast-growing economy and how we must support entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs in India. And fifth is how we as India diaspora community can work with the center and with the state to fund and give back to Indian entrepreneurs. So the final recommendations from this conference was building a communication strategy and a brand for the World Hindu Economic Forum going forward. Secondly, we discussed how us as a platform need to mentor young entrepreneurs in India. Furthermore, we need to see how we can scale India and support the Prime Minister's program of Scale India. Fourth and fifth recommendations are intertwined. We need to build an ecosystem that provides capital to startups, and we need to build a platform for online networking among the SMEs in India. So that's the summary of our economic portion.
Namaste everyone. Before I start with the report, as I am coming from Karnataka, I would like to quote a poet, famous poet, G.S. Shivarudrappa, who has said about who a woman is. ಆಕಾಶದ ನೀಲಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಚಂದ್ರ ತಾರೆ ತೊಟ್ಟಿಲಲ್ಲಿ ಬೆಳಕನಿಟ್ಟು ತೂಗಿದಾಕೆ ನಿನಗೆ ಬೇರೆ ಹೆಸರು ಬೇಕೆ ಸ್ತ್ರೀ ಎಂದರೆ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಸಾಕೆ. Oh, the creator of the cosmos, the sun, the moon, and the entire galaxy are your creations. And you are the one who cradled them. You are the Shakti. Are there any words to describe your boundless strength of love? It is enough to call you the Stree, the women. Yes. The second World Hindu Women Conference had a theme, highest respect to the women, and objective being aspire, achieve, and inspire. The proceeding of the conference was so designed as to provide proper perspective to the delegates, and scholarly analysis was made on topics such as Hindu women and economy, Artha Upanishad, women and education, Shiksha Upanishad, media and art, Kala Madhyama Upanishad, role of Hindu women in shaping the society, Stree Yogadana Upanishad, and inspiring women, Spurti Upanishad. And the outcome is Stree Gita. In her keynote address, Srimati Chandrika Tandonji gave an insight towards the path, family, finance, spirituality, and success with her own sadhana. Contribution of Hindu women to economy was chaired by Dr. Somdatta Singh with Dr. Tony Das Gupta, Srimati Meena Patel, and Dr. Nandini Tandon as panelists. For common man, economy is to revitalize the calculative capabilities of women. Access to knowledge, information, and finance are helpful in breaking the glass ceiling. Media and art. The two great tools to showcase principles and values of Hindu Dharma, discussion on portrayal and Hindu women, and our responsibility in media to change the narrative. Professor Anuradha Gokhale was the chairperson. Dr. Anupama Hosekere was the chairperson. Role of Hindu women in shaping the society. With the natural power of nurturing, women can shape from child to the society. Different ways, challenges, and opportunities to make a positive impact in the society was also discussed. Inspiring women. Alka Taiji, Alka Taiji was the chairperson, and Yogini Shambhavi Devi, Amrita Taylor, Madhu Purnima Kishwarji were there as panelists. In Inspiring Women, there were 5 successful women sharing their inspiring stories from different walks of life who inspired the entire gathering. Finally, in the way forward, Dr. Uma Vaidya summarized all the sessions. The delegates were divided into groups to discuss the next action items in each field, which gave an insight to meet the plan of, to the next plan of action. In all, we had a galaxy of speakers who were very high, who had very high profile and could directly connect with the delegates, and which helped for our conference to be a success. We have, the outcome of the conference was short term, expanding the activities of Hindu Women Forum and adopting a common minimum program for all the chapters. Conducting value-based workshop, seminar, symposiums for young girls. Long term, to create an angel investor group to support Hindu women entrepreneurs. Create Global Hindu Women Directory. This was the outcome of the conference. Thank you.
Namaste, everyone. I wanted to begin by thanking everyone on the organizing committee who I'm representing here today, especially my joint coordinator, Amrita Haldeji, as well as the team from the previous World Hindu Youth Conference, whose advice was really instrumental in us making sure that this conference was successful this time around. So as the youth representing the vision of the World Hindu Congress, it was our responsibility to make sure that the deliberations that happened here today were actually translated into tangible action. The objectives of the youth conference were looking at really the importance that youth has for Hindu society here today. And I'm sure as we can all sort of realize and sympathize with, youth are the future leaders and karyakartas of this Hindu resurgence movement. So it's very important that we ensure that the circle of Hindu identity continues to expand, and that the Hindu youth throughout the world are identifying very clearly and confidently with their Hindu identity and with Hindu dharma. We want to make sure that we are leveraging the youth skills in social media for effective activism so we can change the narrative that currently exists of Hindu identity and present our own narrative of what it means to be Hindu in the 21st century. We also want to be able to use the experience of other fora, of all of you guys, to be able to prepare Hindu youth to be ambassadors for their Hindu dharma for the next generation. Being the youth and the next generation, we wanted to do things a little bit differently. So, to ensure that the mission of action was actually realized, prior to the conference, we decided on a set of concrete projects that we would take forward. Each of our panels was linked to one of these projects. So we had 5 panels, each one linked to a specific project, and our 6th session was dedicated to a workshop which developed each of these 5 projects. We actually worked as hard on the action part of it as we did on the rest of the panels prior to the Congress. So our first session, our first panel at this World Hindu Congress was Strengthening Hindu Identity, focusing on the I don't know phenomenon as the key roadblock to Hindu youth in embracing the Hindu identity. If you don't know about your rich civilizational heritage and culture, it's very hard for you as a young person growing up in the US, UK, Bharat, to identify proudly with your culture and with the Hindu label. We located responsibility on promoting Hindu values and identity on ourselves. As Drishti May of NHSF put it, if not you, then who? The project linked to this session is called the Hindu Students and Youth Network, which is also the organizing forum of the Hindu Youth Conference. It's a network to help connect Hindu youth groups from around the world together in projects of mutual importance to ensure that we're sharing strategies and best practices to ensure that the objectives that I raised at the beginning of my brief presentation are met for the generation going forward, and that we are creating a truly global Hindu identity. Our second session here at the Hindu Youth Conference was called Engaged Hindu Action Through Knowledge. We discussed the need to speak out against biased portrayals of Hinduism through a case study of the California textbooks controversy, as well as the need for the dharmic traditions to have a voice, a seat at the table, in critical areas of public policy. Specifically, we heard from speakers on the dharmic traditions' role in ensuring a vibrant environmental movement and their role in promoting a global vision of what it means to be Hindu in the realm of global defense and strategy through the theories of Acharya Chanakya. The project linked to that is the Global Mentorship Program for Women, which is a forum that will help connect young women who are aspiring in their career goals, as well as looking to find their Hindu identity with more experienced mentors. And we hope that Ramaratna ji, you and Manju ji will collaborate with us from the Hindu Women's Forum on this project. Our third session was called Hindu Youth as Drivers and Leaders of the Economy. This session focused on models such as blockchain, which are quasi-dharmic in their decentralized outlook on the economy, as well as a cluster model of what it really means to base our modern economy on dharmic principles. So how can we live out the principles of dharma also when we try to make artha? We wanted to make sure that we were also discussing the innovation that is inherently embedded within our traditions. And so one example that was given was that of Paninian grammar. So we're trying to make sure that that innovation, that spirit of innovation that exists, is inbuilt into the dharmic traditions, is lived out through our economic innovators as well. The project linked to this is the Young Hindu Business Network. Many of you may be familiar with the Hindu Business Network that WEF has already launched. We've already launched 2 chapters of Young Hindu Business Network before the conference started. We were very serious about taking this as an action plan. One in Dallas through Arnav Kejriwal, who was also in our organizing team, and one in Mumbai. The objective of this is to help connect young Hindu entrepreneurs to the experienced mentors and contacts that will help them take their vision to the next level. Our fourth panel, was called Hindu Youth and Media. We wanted to make sure that we are re-owning the narrative of what it means to be Hindu through both social and mass media, and that we are promoting subtly dharmic themes such as cosmology, Carnatic music, the influence of Hinduism in math in mainstream films. So there's no project currently linked to this, but we would be happy to collaborate with the Media Forum on something related to social media. Our fifth panel was on Hindu politics and human rights. We discussed the terrible abuse of human rights of Hindus in Pakistan and Bangladesh, and discussed with speakers who are already trying to tackle these issues, such as GHRD, on how we can try to raise awareness about it. We underlined the importance of standing for something and owning our Hindu identity in the public space. The 2 projects linked to this are the Hindu Human Rights Task Force and the Global Mentorship Program for Politicians. So I'm happy to report that I spoke with Sanjay Puriji of the Hindu Political Forum yesterday, and the Global Mentorship Program for Politicians, which is a program that will help link young Hindus who are looking to go into a career of public service, which is so important to represent our community on the public stage, that they will have the opportunity to shadow with more experienced politicians and be able to gain the know-how and the insight to really launch their careers and launch their careers in public service. And the other project that we have is the Hindu Human Rights Task Force, as I mentioned, which is a dedicated team that will leverage the youth's skill and savvy in social media to help spread awareness about the problems facing Hindus around the world. And with that, I turn it back to Abhay Uncle, who now owes $100.
Namaskar. I have to be very careful what I speak, because after that last evening discussion, wherever I go, I am called, instead of Gunaji, I am called Kadak Laddu. So I have to be very careful what I say. Now, the aim of this Hota Forum is to bring Hindu organizations, temples, associations, language-based and community-based organizations, all different sampradayas who are working for the Hindu resurgence on one common platform. Why? To share the best practices, experiences, and ideas. The guiding theme of the Hindu Organizational Conference is Shange Shakti Kaliyuge, which means organization is strength. We had 6 sessions, like all 7 parallel conferences. The first one is Mandir and Culture, serving the needs of Hindu community. Here, one of the hit topics was freeing temples from government clutches. Swami Paramatmanandaji spoke on this. Second one is Temple initiated the largest midday meals program in the world, which is Akshaya Patra. Yeah. Likewise, we had 4 topics. The second session was on human rights violation around the world, and the ideas to discuss defending Hindu human rights in the countries where we had difficulties, and also safeguard the rights of Romas, Yazidis, and Hindus in Bangladesh and Pakistan. Session 3 and 4, also very interesting. The one is the collaboration between and within language-based and cultural organizations. Initially, we were going to have 2 of them separately, but then we have brought them together. Here, we brought the community leaders from Telugu, Tamil, Kannada, Gujarati, Marathi, Bengali, Punjabi. But we wanted more groups to come, but this is a good initiative. I'm sure as we pass with time, things will happen. The other one, and I was so impressed, was the operational mechanism for Hindus to reach unreached areas, where reaching to the South American society, European, African, and Central Asian countries. Session 5 and 6 are related to the challenges and opportunities before the Hindu society. We are shaping global Hindu identity, situation in Indonesia, etc. The last one was like how the global Hindus making global impact. We all know about the economic side, likewise in different areas. And California textbook correction movement. We had a lot of discussion whether to add this because it was discussed in other groups. But I believe this had an influence and it could make this can be replicated in other places. The other one is people appreciated the Hindu activism in America and how it can be replicated elsewhere. Similar. Now going to the highlights. For the first time ever, a good number of leaders of language-based organizations participated in a panel session. We need to develop this further. We have gone with about 8 community organizations, but we know that we have many more organizations which are resourceful, which are very, very active, and who have very good connections with the community, respective communities. The second one is the reaching the unreached areas. Here, we were told there are many indigenous communities in South America. Our Swami Param Advaiti ji spoke about it. And there are many communities who are still maintain the ancient cultural practices which are close to Hindu culture and customs. So we need to develop the links to make it like what we have done with the Hindu Maori community in New Zealand. The next is, as I mentioned, the textbook, you see the effect of it. Next slide, please. Here you can see our co-coordinator, Sanjay Tripathi ji, who spoke about that one. Number of people, including our MC, the first day MC, they were inquiring how to take this to Chicago and other areas. Very positive outcome, in highlight as well as outcome. The next slide, please. You may wonder why I put this slide. Next slide, please. This is a grand panel. But why I am trying to climb? Because this is a highlight in a sense. While we were planning, this was the session 3 of our HOTA conference. But such a highly learned leaders were coming together, we didn't want only HOTA people to get benefit. So we shifted from HOTA to grand panel. So this is one of the highlights of HOTA forum. I will climb, whether you want it or not, I will climb. In terms of outcomes, this conference in America created a visible and strong Hindu identity. And this is a very positive. There were a number of people who have openly told that, "Hare, such a big conference here, very positive, you know." We have at least changed from that Mela thinking to conference thinking. The second one, Hindu activism was very appreciated, as I mentioned earlier. People wanted to replicate in future wherever the situation arises. And coming together of the language base, I'm repeating again because that is a very positive thing. And we could see the leaders telling, "Arey, we should be having regular meetings like this." And we have just started to engage this organization, and we need to build upon it. And this is for the organizations to come together, and the organizers of this conference or this Congress to go to them again and develop together. In other words, collaboration and cooperation between organizations is the next important step. And Hindu Organization Conference has created enough interest, and I'm going to request that this conference host or the organizer should organize a national conference of Hindu contribution to American society. Thank you very much.
Namaste. I have a little sore throat, so please bear with me. There's a saying, there's a subhashit, Nasti Vidya Samam Chakshuh. There is no eye better than Vidya. A lot of problems which we face today, including those related to media and organizations and all this, it is fundamentally anchored in what kind of education, formal as well as informal, we get. And if we sort out the problem of education, then slowly but surely everything else will align in that direction. So with that perspective, the Hindu Education Board has been organizing Hindu educational conferences over the last several years. And the purpose of this board is very broad. It is quality education for all. And in all, it implies all countries, all societies, all. So it's a very ambitious vision. And it also has a focus on quality, implying that it should be the best possible education in all spheres, secular as well as sacred. So that is the theme. So with that in perspective, in this particular conference, there were 6 themes which were covered. The first theme was, how do we provide quality education in growing economies, excuse me, especially in countries like Bharat and elsewhere, because you have a very large number of people. The government can only do so much. There are so many other resources available. So how do you pool in all these resources and get to ensure that the best possible education is available to a very large number of Bharatiya people and at affordable points? So wonderful discussion points came out of it, and in terms of conclusions, we'll actually see in the next slides in terms of outcomes. No. Please, go back to the last slide. Last slide, please. No, last slide. Previous, previous. See, this is education. My education is, yes, please stay on this slide. So the second one was, how do we develop Hindu scholarship across the world? Because right now, especially in Bharat, there's a very significant lack of formal Hindu scholarship. And if we do not have experts in area of religious studies, Hindu studies, then we cannot articulate our positions. And then slowly but surely, whatever perception relates to Hindu Dharma, it gets distorted in media. The third one, and extremely importantly, the purpose of the third session was, how do we network very large number of Hindu intellectuals who are working in areas of medicine, in science, in technology, in social sciences, in religion, in philosophy, in almost every university, small or large, famous or not so famous. You have people at very eminent levels. This is a wonderful asset. How do we develop a network so that we can collectively pool our resources, benefit each other, and in process also benefit, and serve the cause of dharma? Then there was another session on how do we strengthen our traditions, our knowledge systems, and languages. Because if languages of Bharat are lost, everything else will be lost because all the knowledge which relates to dharma is contained in these books, in books of Hindi, Marathi, Telugu, and of course Sanskrit. So how do we strengthen our languages and also our knowledge traditions? Then there was one session which is very popular, especially to us, that there are significant Western academic challenges, the analysis of Hindu dharma, Hindu civilization, Hindu culture, and it gets looked through a particular prism, the Western prism. And this generates a lot of challenges. So there was very invigorating, energetic discussion on those lines. And then there were some important perspectives from across the globe. There are lots of significant happenings across the globe. So we pulled in some of those important elements, and that was the last session. Next slide, please. We had delegates from over 30 countries in just this, in the education track, just the education track. And I was, and I was surprised to see that there was a very significant presence from Latin America. We had people from Ecuador, Costa Rica, Bolivia, Peru. So that was very encouraging, at least to me personally. We had over 300 delegates. Another thing was that at the end of the day, one thing which everyone realized is that we need education system, an educational system which promotes two things. Swabhiman, which is self-reliance, which is confidence, self-confidence, and Swavlamban, which is self-reliance. So we have to get out of this thing of education for the purpose of job. So self-confidence and self-reliance. The third thing, which was a highlight, is that there is very clear understanding of what we want, which is what I term is at mantra. But there is less clarity on how do we get there, on what kind of systems we need, which is tantra, and even lesser clarity on what are the exact tools which are needed to achieve there, that is yantra. So that was another thing. So we have to work on the later two, tantra and yantra, and that is one thing we will be focusing over next 4 years. Next slide, please. In terms of outcomes, and this is what we will be working on, is first outcome is that it is extremely possible that over next 4 years, we will work on developing a very robust network of Hindu scholars who are positioned in different parts of the globe in different areas of expertise. There is already some wonderful work happening by organizations like VAHA or organizations led by Harikiran Vadlamani ji, and we have to all work together and amplify and strengthen this kind of this thing. So that is one very important goal. The second thing is, over next 4 years, at least from the standpoint of Hindu Education Board, there will be a very concerted effort, and efforts in that direction has already begun, yes, that we'll be putting in a place a strategy and also the yantra and tantra, excuse me, to develop scholarship in area of religious studies so that we understand ourselves and also understand others. It's not just Hindu studies, we should also understand others. Just to give you very quick background, important discussions had already happened prior to this particular conference on these lines in Bangalore and also in, in Chennai and also in Haridwar. In one of the meetings, Datta ji and Mani Bhagaiya ji and several other senior adhikaris were also present. Leaders from several other spiritual organizations were also present. So that is one important area where we'll be working on. And the last one is we'll be working very strongly towards developing yantras and tantras so that we can actually solve this language problem. Because unless we solve this problem of language, we can continue doing whatever we are doing. We will still be stuck where we are. So these were the 3 important outcomes of this particular conference. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Namaste, everyone. As Abhayji said, this element was introduced for the first time to the World Hindu Congress. What he did not say is this was actually his brainchild. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to do it. and also for letting us run the show the way we wanted it. So thank you very much for that. At the outset, I would like to recognize Dr. Chandra Reddy, who is my right-hand person throughout this ordeal, through all the trials and tribulations. So Chandraji, please rise and be recognized. Of course, I would like to recognize all the 56 poster presenters who put in their hard work and brought out these ideas and messages for you delegates to look at and take inspirations and go back home and inspire yourself and the communities you live in. So my thanks to all those who put the posters together. Last but not least, Madhuji Bhargav, she was extremely helpful in, well, of course, her company printed the posters, but she made so many helpful suggestions along the way that without her help, we really could not have done it. So thank you. I know she went back home, so thank you, Madhuji. So with that, let me move on. So why did we do it? What was the reason for introducing the poster element? The primary reason was the recognition that there's just so many things happening around the world in the Hindu community. We like to hear about these things. However, we don't have time in the regular panel sessions for them to be able to tell their stories. So we really wanted to create a different medium of communication that was highly interactive, highly personal, and also was scalable. So you could accommodate a lot of people in a very compact fashion. Whether we were able to achieve that or not, I guess we'll let you tell us that. But we found it to be extremely pleasing. We saw a lot of activity around the posters, so hopefully it did its job. Thank you. There were 56 posters. Majority of them came from HOTA and Education and Women. There were some posters from the youth and media as well. They covered a variety of topics, and contributions came from all over the world. I've listed some of the countries where they came from, and hopefully next time we do it, it'll be even more representative. Next slide, please. So did we achieve our objective? As I said, I think you have to be the judge of that. What we saw was numerous clusters of animated conversations going on throughout the area and throughout the 2 days of the Congress. We saw evidence of strong networking going on among poster presenters and between the presenters and the delegates. We've received excellent feedback so far from all the people that we've talked to, and we certainly plan to collect additional feedback via email over the next few days. So we feel it was a success, but we'll find out from your feedback. Next slide, please. So what are some of the takeaways? Now, realize that we don't have the format is not like the other tracks. So we had to make a judgment call as to what are some of the things that stood out based on the conversations we saw around the corridor. One thing that stood out for us in a big way was Seva as a theme. There were many, many posters that spoke to this particular element. Seva, in all its ways, in all its forms, is probably the quickest pathway to making visible impact. There was one particular example that stood out for me. It, for example, talked about the fact that 50% of Bharat's population is operating with impaired vision. And a simple act of providing cost-effective eyeglasses can make a huge, huge difference in the, for example, in reducing road accidents, improving the life of people, improving their ability to earn a living, and so on and so forth. So that is a great example of Seva. We can scale it up. The next thing that stood out for me was taking control back of our temples. Now, I didn't compare notes with Gunaji, so clearly we had came up with one of the same themes. Now, we don't have to explain to anyone as to why we should take back control of temples. However, my aim here is a little bit different. And that is, we need resources for doing all the things that we're doing. It is well known that we don't like to give to social services as much as we we need, but we like to give to temples. And therefore, temples can act as a great resource for supporting the kind of projects that we have in mind, the Seva projects and so on and so forth. Finally, it stands to reason that we can do everything we want, but unless we take the message out there in the media, nothing is going to matter. So making the media strong to disseminate our success stories and to support the Hindu narrative is absolute must. And those are three themes that stood out for us: Seva, taking mandirs back, and media. So now I have an important task. I know time is running out, but I have an important task. Remember, this was the first time we were introducing this, so we wanted to maintain a very high quality of the posters. In order to do that, we introduced a sense of competition. So we decided we're going to judge the 3 best posters out of all the entries. We had an independent panel of distinguished judges, 3 judges, who had nothing to do with the poster activity during its formation. The judging process basically emphasized the quality, clarity, and the impact of the idea. So now I have the task of announcing the 3 top posters. But before I do that, let me say that each and every one of the posters was a winner because they had absolutely fantastic quality. So with that, let me show the first poster. This is So Prakash Shamsi, that is, this is his poster. Congratulations to you. Next one, please. A Genocide Forgotten, Pakistani Hindus. And the last one is Gurukula.com. Thank you very much. This is my report.